These people need to leave. Brenda, this is my home.
Your home? You live here because I allow it. This pool is community property now. I say who swims. I say when. You really need to understand your position here. This entire property belongs to the community now. So I suggest you get used to it. Your wife is dead. Garrett, stop hiding behind a ghost and start acting like a man.
30 strangers, my backyard. Beer cans floating in the water my dying wife designed from her hospital bed. And the HOA president was running the whole circus with a megaphone and a smile. What she didn't know was that I build pools for a living, and that hers sat on $52,000 of stolen HOA money and a public drainage easement her husband had rubber-stamped. So I turned her pool into a free public splash park. And what happened next, you'll want to hear every word. My name is Garrett Holloway, and I design swimming pools for a living. Custom residential builds, natural stone coping, vanishing edges, integrated spas, the kind of backyards that end up in glossy magazines. I've been doing it for 14 years across Central Texas, hand-selecting limestone from the same hill country quarry my father took me to when I was a kid. But the pool in my backyard at 4817 Lantana Drive wasn't built for a client. It was built for Elena. Elena was my wife. 5'3", quick smile, the kind of laugh that filled a room before she even finished the joke. She was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 2 weeks after our son Colton's 8th birthday. 14 months later, she was gone. Before she died, she did something I carry with me every day. She designed our pool. Not a napkin sketch, a real design. She borrowed my drafting software, measured our yard from her hospital window, and drew an E-shaped pool with a natural stone waterfall on the east wall, LEDs that shifted from blue to green at sunset, and a shallow tanning shelf where Colton could sit with his feet in the water and read. She slid the printout across her hospital blanket and said, "Build it for Colton. He should grow up near water." So I did. For 6 months, I built it myself. Weekends, evenings, whenever Colton was asleep. I hauled the limestone, poured the shell, ran the plumbing, wired the lights, and set every stone in that waterfall like I was building something sacred. The filtration ran on salt instead of chlorine, gentler on the stone, gentler on Colton's skin. At night, when the waterfall ran and those LEDs glowed through the limestone, it looked like a dream. Elena's dream. We moved to Willow Creek Estates because the lot was big, the schools were close, and the HOA fees seemed reasonable. Nobody warned me the HOA was run by Brenda Caldwell. I met Brenda on moving day. She was standing on my porch before the moving truck finished backing in, measuring my trash can with a yellow tape measure. Tight blonde bun, linen blazer over yoga pants, white Cadillac Escalade parked like the street belonged to her. She handed me a welcome packet thick as a lease agreement and said, "Welcome to Willow Creek. I run a tight ship." Then she spotted the pallets of limestone on my trailer and narrowed her eyes. "You're not planning anything excessive, are you?" Within 3 months, the violation letters started. My pool fence was supposedly 2 inches too short. My LEDs were causing light pollution. My pump created excessive noise after 9 p.m. Every claim was made up. My fence exceeded code. My lights were dimmer than her porch lamps. My salt pump was quieter than a refrigerator. But the letters kept coming. Always lavender stationery. Always smelling faintly like cheap vanilla perfume. Always signed with a dramatic flourish. Brenda S. Caldwell, President, Willow Creek Estates, HOA. I saved every one of them in a folder labeled Brenda. At the time, I had no idea that folder would become the most valuable thing in my house. Then she came after the pool directly. She showed up in my driveway one afternoon wearing Gucci sunglasses and carrying a clipboard. "Garrett, It would be a wonderful gesture if you opened your pool for a community wellness event. Show the neighborhood you're a team player. I said what any homeowner would say. My pool is on my lot, Brenda. It's private property. She tilted her head and smiled without warmth. Everything in this neighborhood is my business, Garrett. Everything. 3 weeks later, I was finishing a consultation in Dripping Springs when my phone rang. It was my neighbor Ray Munoz, a retired Army sergeant who never called unless something was wrong. Brother, you better get home. There's a damn pool party at your house, and you ain't the one throwing it. I made the drive in 22 minutes. I heard the music before I turned onto Lantana Drive. When I pulled up, my stomach dropped. There were more than 30 people in my backyard. Families I didn't know. Teenagers cannonballing into the deep end. Toddlers on Elena's tanning shelf. Some guy was grilling burgers on a portable Weber sitting on my grass. Coolers of beer were lined up on the limestone deck. A banner hung from my fence. Willow Creek HOA Summer Splash. Free entry. And there was Brenda. Poolside. Sunflower print muumuu. Gold sandals. Megaphone in hand. Kids under 10 stay in the shallow end. Burgers are almost ready. Remember to thank your HOA for this wonderful community event. Then I looked at the waterfall. A little kid was hanging off the railing Elena had positioned so the water would fall at exactly the right angle. The railing was bent. Something cold settled in my chest. I walked through the gate. Every step crunched on chips and spilled ice. The air smelled like sunscreen, charcoal, and stale beer. Brenda, I said, as flat as I could. What the hell is this? She turned to me with that pageant smile. Community event, Garrett. Article 14 of the CC&Rs. Shared amenity access. This pool falls under neighborhood wellness programming. This is my private property. She raised the megaphone and announced to the crowd, "Folks, Mr. Holloway doesn't seem to believe in community spirit. Don't worry, I'll handle it." I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. She smiled and reached into her pocket. "Already did, sweetheart. Told them you were threatening my guests." 2 patrol cars showed up within minutes. The officers checked my deed, checked the HOA documents, and told Brenda exactly what I'd been saying. "Ma'am, this is private residential property. There is no shared amenity clause for a homeowner's personal pool. Everyone needs to leave," Brenda argued. She cited articles that didn't exist, demanded badge numbers, claimed the officers didn't understand the bylaws. Didn't matter. The crowd packed up slowly, some embarrassed, some irritated, most not looking me in the eye as they carried their pool noodles and wet towels out through my gate. When the last car pulled away, I walked the yard. 3 cracked limestone tiles, a grease burn in the Bermuda grass, the waterfall railing bent, food grease clogging the filtration intake, beer cans floating in the deep end like aluminum tombstones. The damage estimate came back at $8,200. Brenda returned 20 minutes later because she'd forgotten her megaphone on my patio table. She picked it up, looked at the mess, and said, "Next time, just say yes. It's easier for everyone." That night, after Colton went to bed, I sat outside with the pool lights off and stared at the damage. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I opened the folder labeled Brenda and added time-stamped photographs of everything. Then I opened the Willow Creek CC&Rs and read all 47 pages, line by line. The fine arrived Monday morning. $500 a day, effective immediately, for non-compliance with HOA Community Amenity Access Policy, Section 14.3. Section 14.3 did not exist. I had spent Sunday night with a highlighter and legal pad. Article 14 covered common area maintenance, landscaping, drainage, and streetlight repair. Nothing about private pools. Nothing about shared access. Nothing about community wellness programming. Brenda had invented the policy, invented the section number, printed it on official letterhead, and dropped it in my mailbox like it was law. Now here's the part worth knowing. In Texas, any HOA rule that restricts how a homeowner uses private property has to be approved properly by the association, according to statute and governing documents. You don't get to invent a rule because you own a clipboard and a label maker. Brenda skipped all of that. She wasn't enforcing policy, she was issuing decrees. So I drafted a cease and desist letter, cited the governing documents and the statute, attached highlighted pages, and mailed it certified. 3 days later, the HOA secretary, Tammy Oakes, called me in a near whisper. She read your letter out loud at the board meeting, called it toilet paper, and ripped it in half. The next week, Brenda called an emergency board meeting. I attended. She arrived with a hastily assembled PowerPoint titled Community Wellness Initiative. Her motion was simple. Officially declare my backyard pool a community wellness facility subject to HOA scheduling. I stood up and objected. I cited the CC&Rs. I cited the statute. I pointed out that the pool sat entirely on my surveyed lot, built with my own money, by my own hands. Brenda smiled, ignored all of it, and called for a vote. It passed 4-1. The only dissent came from Warren Shipley, a retired accountant who still believed votes were supposed to follow rules. 2 days later, a man in aviator sunglasses pulled into my driveway in an unmarked white pickup. He introduced himself as Larry Fenton and said he was there for a mandatory safety evaluation of my pool facility. He tapped fence posts, poked at the waterfall, walked the deck for 45 minutes, and announced that the waterfall was non-compliant and had to be removed within 30 days. I asked for his license number. He handed me a business card instead. That evening, I looked him up. Larry Fenton had no pool inspection license, no aquatic safety certification, no engineering credentials. He was a general contractor whose only listed client was Doug Caldwell's construction firm. Doug Caldwell, Brenda's husband. The whole inspection was theater. So I didn't call Brenda. I didn't confront Larry. I photographed the truck, the badge, the clipboard, the business card, and the licensing lookup. Then I added it to the folder. That night, I installed 2 more security cameras, 4K, infrared, motion activated, footage sent directly to my phone. While I was on the ladder, Colton came outside in his pajamas and asked, "Dad, why does that lady hate our pool?" I climbed down and knelt beside him. "She doesn't hate the pool, buddy. She hates that she can't control it." He thought about that for a second and said, "That's dumb." "Yeah," I said, "it really is." 2 weeks later, Brenda escalated. She mailed a letter to every household in Willow Creek, accusing me of operating an unsafe private aquatic facility and recommending that the neighborhood support draining and permanently filling my pool for the protection of the community's children. She attached a petition. 12 people signed it. Then she posted the same accusation online with a photo of my backyard she'd taken during the pool invasion. Most of the neighborhood pushed back, but Brenda kept going. Then she crossed the line. One Tuesday morning, my doorbell rang. I opened it and found a woman in a gray blazer holding a state ID. Child Protective Services. An anonymous complaint had been filed alleging that my son was being exposed to an unsafe, unsecured pool without proper supervision. I let her in. I showed her everything. The iron fence, self-closing gate, surface alarm, lockable cover, CPR kit, depth markers, Colton's swim certifications, camera footage showing I was present whenever he was in the water. 30 minutes later, she shut her notebook and said, "Mr. Holloway, your setup is better than most municipal pools I inspect. This complaint has no merit whatsoever." Then she left. A few minutes later, Colton came into the hallway, backpack still on, eyes red. "Dad, are we in trouble? Are they going to take me away?" That one hit harder than the fake fines, harder than the invasion, harder than the vandalism that would come later. I knelt down and held him close. "Nobody is taking you anywhere, ever. I promise." That night, after he was asleep, I sat in my office and pulled up the county GIS mapping system. Because something had been bothering me. Weeks earlier, while reviewing the original plat records for Willow Creek, I'd noticed a gap, something odd between Brenda's recorded lot line and the edge of her pool. So I called Hank Prescott, a licensed land surveyor with 30 years of experience. He spent 2 days measuring easements, setbacks, and property lines across the subdivision. Then he spread the finished survey over my dining room table and tapped a section outlined in red. "Son," he said, "her pool isn't just close to the easement. 18 feet of it, and the whole west deck, sit directly on a recorded drainage easement." I stared at the map. The easement was part of the original subdivision plat, clearly recorded, 24 feet wide, dedicated for stormwater management. Brenda's pool had been built right through the middle of it. "When was this pool built?" Hank asked. 2019? He gave a low whistle. "Then somebody signed off on something they never should have." That answer was already in my folder. The permit for Brenda's pool had been approved by the County Planning Commission. The approving signature belonged to Douglas R. Caldwell, her husband. No public hearing, no delay, 6-day turnaround. And then came the money. I'd also requested HOA financial records. Buried in the 2019 report was a line item labeled Community Drainage Improvement Project, $52,000. The vendor was Lone Star Aquatic Construction. The invoice was not for drainage work. It was for a residential swimming pool, 17 by 34 feet, variable depth, tile finish, attached spa, travertine deck. The specs matched Brenda's backyard exactly. Brenda Caldwell had used $52,000 of HOA money to build herself a private pool on land that belonged to the community. Her husband had approved the permit, and then she had the nerve to tell me my private pool should belong to the neighborhood. I sat in my living room surrounded by documents, looking at Elena's framed pool design on the wall. Then I looked out the window toward Brenda's house, and the plan came together. Not revenge, something better. If Brenda wanted the community to have a pool so badly, I would give them hers. I hired Angela Whitmore, a real estate attorney in downtown Austin, who specialized in HOA disputes and easement litigation. Angela looked over the survey, the financials, the permit records, and the inspection sham and said, "Mr. Holloway, this is the most thoroughly documented act of self-dealing I've seen in years." She filed a petition asking the court to reclassify the encroached easement area, including the footprint of Brenda's pool, as HOA common space, or order restoration of the land to its intended public purpose. Then I started phase 2. I knocked on doors. Every evening after work, I walked the neighborhood with a one-page summary, survey findings, financial records, permit history, and a proposal to convert the illegally built pool site into a community splash park using recovered funds. I didn't ask for money. I asked for signatures. In 11 days, 74 households signed. And once people realized someone was finally standing up to Brenda, the stories poured out. A retired teacher fined over a garden gnome. A single mother whose car got towed during a garage sale. An elderly couple denied permission for a wheelchair ramp because it disrupted visual continuity. 9 years of petty tyranny came spilling out from behind those front doors. Then came phase 3, design. This part, I'll admit, I enjoyed. Night after night, after Colton fell asleep, I sat at my drafting table and designed a ground-level splash park on the exact footprint of Brenda's illegal pool. Spray jets in a circular layout, mushroom fountain, tipping bucket, rubberized safety surface, shade pavilion, picnic tables, water bottle station. Total footprint, identical to her pool and deck. Total cost, $52,000. Exactly what she stole. Across the top of the blueprint I wrote, Willow Creek Community Splash Park, funded by recovered HOA assessments, designed by Garrett Holloway. Then came phase 4, media. I sent everything to Nina Castillo, an investigative reporter at KXAN who had covered HOA corruption cases before. She called me back within the hour. "Mr. Holloway, this is a segment. Can we bring a camera to the meeting?" Absolutely. I built a presentation. Clean, factual, devastating. Survey overlay, financial records, permit chain, footage of Brenda's trespass and vandalism, and the final slide, the full-color splash park rendering. I filed the request for a special HOA meeting. The bylaws required signatures from 25% of homeowners. I had 58%. The meeting was set for Thursday at 7 p.m. That's when Brenda went feral. First came the lawyer letter. Threats of defamation, harassment, interference with property rights, conspiracy. Angela answered in one page and copied the district attorney's office. That law firm vanished. Then Brenda held a closed-door board session with her loyalists and voted through a $15,000 lien against my property for accumulated amenity non-compliance. Angela added that to the court filing too. Then, at 3:12 one morning, my driveway camera picked up a black pickup. Two men got out. They poured wet concrete across the full width of my driveway. By sunrise, my driveway was sealed. The camera caught the plate clearly. The truck was registered to Caldwell Commercial Construction, Doug's company. I had to hire a crew to jackhammer it out. That invoice went in the folder. So did the police report. That same week, Doug called me directly. "Holloway, you're making a serious mistake. I know people on every board and commission in this county. Your professional license could disappear like that." He snapped his fingers into the phone. I said, "Doug, you're threatening retaliation by a public official on a recorded line. I appreciate the evidence." He hung up. Brenda sent one more mass email warning the neighborhood that I was trying to destroy private property rights. 4 people supported her. Everyone else either ignored it or forwarded it to me, asking if she had lost her mind. Then came the rally. 3 days before the meeting, Brenda organized a community unity rally on her front lawn. She advertised it everywhere. Save our HOA. Protect property rights. Important county speaker. 8 people showed up. 3 were her family. The county speaker did not exist. Ray sent me a photo of Brenda addressing rows of empty chairs in 100-degree heat like she was on a campaign trail no one believed in. Then, 4 days before the meeting, my East Yard motion alert went off at 2:15 a.m. I opened the feed. A figure in dark clothing slipped through my side gate carrying a grocery bag. She pulled out a can of red spray paint, walked up to the cedar fence around Elena's pool, shook the can, and sprayed 3 words in big dripping letters. Pool thief. The camera caught everything. Face, hands, can, timestamp. It was Brenda. Brenda Caldwell, the woman who built her pool with stolen HOA money on community land using a permit her husband approved, had vandalized my fence to call me a pool thief. I called the police at dawn. Lieutenant Greer watched the footage and just shook his head. "Holloway, in 20 years I have never seen one quite like this." I left the paint exactly where it was. That same evening, Tammy Oakes called again. Her voice was shaking. "Garrett, I can't do this anymore. I have copies of everything. The checks, the receipts, the emails, the original invoice, the internal memo where she told the board to classify the pool expense as drainage work. All of it." I said, "Bring it to the meeting." She did. The Willow Creek Community Center officially held 120 people. That night, 140 showed up. They lined the walls, stood in the hallway, crowded the doorway. Nina Castillo and her cameraman were set up in the corner. 2 officers stood near the exit. Lieutenant Greer leaned against the wall. County Building Inspector Kevin Driscoll sat in the front row with a manila envelope. Brenda took the president's chair in a cream blazer and pearls, clipboard in hand, smile painted on. Doug sat behind her with his leg bouncing so hard it rattled his chair. I was called to speak at 7:18. I walked to the front, connected my laptop to the projector, and looked out at the room. Then, I clicked the first slide. A full-screen survey overlay. Brenda's lot in blue. Recorded drainage easement in red. 18 feet of her pool, and the entire west deck sitting squarely inside it. This survey was conducted by Hank Prescott, licensed land surveyor, I said. The highlighted section is a recorded drainage easement. Mrs. Caldwell's pool was built directly on top of it. The room started murmuring. Second slide. The 2019 HOA financial report. One line item circled. Community Drainage Improvement Project. $52,000. Beside it, the contractor invoice. Residential pool, attached spa, travertine deck. $52,000 of HOA funds were withdrawn under the label Drainage Improvement, I said. The invoice describes a private swimming pool that matches the one behind Mrs. Caldwell's house. Now the murmuring turned into open conversation. Third slide, the permit. I zoomed in on the signature. This permit was approved by Travis County Planning Commissioner Douglas Caldwell, Mrs. Caldwell's husband. No public hearing. 6-day approval. Doug stood halfway up. Lieutenant Greer slowly uncrossed his arms and looked at him. Doug sat back down. Fourth slide, security footage. Timestamp 2:15 a.m. Brenda, in dark clothes, spray painting "pool thief" across my fence. The room went dead silent. Then someone laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. I let the next slide sit there, the red letters sagging down the cedar boards. Then I said, "The woman who built her pool with your money, on your land, with a permit her husband signed in secret, called me a pool thief." That did it. The room erupted. Then Tammy Oaks stood up from the third row, hands shaking, and read her statement. She confirmed the fund transfers, the false accounting label, the permit chain, the intimidation. By then, Brenda wasn't smiling anymore. I clicked the final slide, the full-color rendering of the Willow Creek Community Splash Park. Spray jets, mushroom fountain, shade pavilion, safe surfacing, the whole thing sitting exactly where Brenda's pool currently stood. "This is what recovered HOA money can build," I said. "A free splash park for every family in Willow Creek. No reservations, no gatekeeping, no megaphone required." There was a beat of silence. Then someone in the back started clapping. Then another. Then the whole room. 140 people on their feet. Brenda shot up so fast she knocked over her chair. "You can't do this to my pool. I built that pool." I looked her dead in the eye. "You built it with their money, Brenda, on their land. Now it goes back to them." The vote was called at 8:04 p.m. 134 in favor of removing Brenda from the HOA board. 6 opposed. It wasn't close. Inspector Driscoll walked forward and handed Brenda an easement violation notice. Lieutenant Greer served Doug with a summons related to misuse of public office. Brenda walked out to the parking lot alone. The Escalade was parked in the fire lane, because of course it was. As she opened the door, somebody from the crowd yelled, "Enjoy the splash park, Brenda." Laughter rolled across the asphalt. 6 months later, the court issued its ruling. The important line fit into one sentence. When public funds are used to construct a private structure on a recorded public easement, the proper remedy is restoration of the land to its intended community purpose. Brenda's pool was ordered removed. Demolition took 3 days. Neighbors came out with coffee and folding chairs to watch the backhoe break apart the shell. Ray brought a cooler and sat on his tailgate like he was at a parade. I volunteered to design the splash park pro bono. Every evening after work, Colton and I drove over to the site. I checked drainage slopes, sight lines, materials, jet heights. I spec'd the fountains to arc low enough for toddlers and high enough for bigger kids to run through with their arms up. The funding fell into place fast. The recovered $52,000 covered the construction budget exactly. A neighborhood fundraiser added another $18,000 for landscaping, extra shade, and a brass dedication plaque. 40 volunteers showed up on build day. We finished in 3 weekends. Where Brenda's spa used to sit, we poured rubberized safety surfacing in blue and green, Elena's colors. Doug Caldwell pleaded guilty before the case ever reached trial. He lost his county seat, paid fines, and completed community service. Brenda and Doug listed their house 3 weeks after the ruling. They sold it at a loss. The buyers were a young couple with twin daughters who said they picked the house because it was next to the splash park. I didn't tell them the whole story. They'd hear it soon enough. The morning Brenda left Willow Creek for the last time, she drove past the completed splash park. It was a Saturday. The spray jets were running. Kids were laughing, shrieking, darting through the mushroom fountain while parents sat under the pavilion. The brass plaque at the entrance read, Willow Creek Community Splash Park, built with recovered community funds, designed by Garrett Holloway. Brenda drove past without turning her head, and she was gone. I used the settlement money, the repair costs, the voided lien, and the damages award to establish the Elena Holloway Memorial Swim Scholarship. It pays for swimming lessons for children in Willow Creek and 3 surrounding neighborhoods. Colton helped me design the application. He insisted on one question. What does water mean to you? We kept it. The night of the Splash Park's grand opening, after the last family had gone home and the fountains were shut off, Colton and I walked back to our own backyard and swam in our pool. Just the 2 of us. The waterfall poured over the limestone. The LEDs shifted from blue to green. The salt water was warm and still. Colton floated on his back and looked up at the stars. Dad? Yeah, bud. You think Mom would have liked the splash park? I looked at the water moving over the stones she chose, under the lights she picked, in the shape she drew from a hospital bed. And I said, she would have loved it. She always said water should bring people together. He smiled and dove under. I stood there listening to Elena's waterfall and watching the ripples settle in that blue-green glow. Still beautiful, still running, still ours. And if you've ever had an HOA president who thought the rules only applied to everyone else, somebody who used a tiny little title like a weapon and made your life miserable for the crime of living in your own home, drop your story in the comments. I want to hear it. And if this is your first time here, hit subscribe, because next week I've got a story about an HOA president who tried to condemn a man's workshop and ended up funding the biggest tool library in the county.